At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
The following podcast may contain discussions supported by science that may be considered dangerous to some listeners and conspiracy theorists. Discretion is advised.
The Three Down Greencast is brought to you by Lucky Bastard Distillers, Saskatchewan's premier distillery, and by the Pile of Bones Brewing Company, brewed in the heart of Regina. Welcome to the Three Down Greencast. You are listening to the internet's only Secret Trades podcast. I am Joel Gasson with John Fraser, as usual. We are back from a bit of a hectic lives in our week in our lives, so that's why you did not hear our tones last week. But we have plenty to get to this week, as of course the Saskatchewan Roughriders have clinched a playoff spot after they defeated the Edmonton Elks last week. So we will get into that game, some of the play from that, some of the decisions from Corey Mace. We'll also talk a little bit ahead of some of the players coming back and talk about the ongoing discussion around the 2024 MOP race. Before we get to all that, though, something happened today as we record this on a Wednesday evening.
Yes.
That is an only in the CFL moment and not really one of those quirky sort of fun CFL moments sort of things.
Like drafting a dead guy.
Yeah, or, wacky comebacks or kickouts or, just anything along that nature.
Right, or game-winning rouges off a missed field goal. This is not wacky fun. This is like Bush League-ish.
Mm-hmm. You may have heard, the Calgary Stampeders recently signed former NFL, former XFL, UFL, NCAA quarterback PJ Walker.
Yes.
Which I am actually very excited about.
I second that.
The guy has clearly shown he's got some talent. He was really fun in the spring league a few years ago. He is clearly a guy that I think is very suited to playing in the CFL. I'm kind of surprised that Dave Dickinson wanted him. He doesn't seem like the type of quarterback that he would do, because Dave's kind of gone with prototypical pocket guys.
Yes.
When you look at Bo Levi Mitchell and now Jake Mayer, but maybe he's realized if you don't have a Bo Levi Mitchell quality pocket passer, you need a guy who can do a little bit more in the CFL.
Yeah.
So maybe
run around, use his legs, and do all those other kind of fun things that PJ Walker can do. Which, again, a chaotic quarterback is great. This is a guy with like legitimate NFL experience, and one could argue, outside of the Red Rifle, would still be the best Carolina Panthers quarterback to this day.
Could be. Very easily could be.
I almost said Hurricanes because A, my mind was I've been watching all this Milton coverage, and B, hockey season started.
Fair enough. The interesting part of this was that apparently the trading of his rights happened a few weeks ago.
Yes.
That the Stampeders said so as much themselves. Three Down Nation's John Hodge had the full details. Basically, some negotiation player list where players were swapped, which this sort of thing happens that we never hear about. But the interesting part is that apparently a conditional draft pick was added to this trade.
Yes.
Which, to me, suggests that the rules around trading negotiationless players suddenly shouldn't count if even conditionally a draft pick is now involved.
I mean, it's strange that there's still this shroud of secrecy around the negotiation list as a whole.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I think it's dumb. I mean, I think you have so many guys like us, or more so you and Dan Plaster, that watch a lot of college football and want to see, and even talking to, my appearance on the Sickos Committee podcast, that a lot of CFL fans from down south are because their guy ends up at a CFL team and they just kind of stick around for the ride, right? So
for sure.
The Cloak and Dagger is definitely weird, but like the Bush League approach to Cloak and Dagger to like just not announce a trade when a pick's involved is like, like it strikes me like that the league has so, my take on it was the league has so little staff actually at the league office that this trade was like left on the bottom of a pile of faxes until Calgary submitted the player contract for PJ Walker, and they went, oh yeah, you did trade for him. And by then, it's too late to announce the trade. So that is my conspiracy theory, that they are using a fax machine, which, for the record, I hate. And it just got forgotten because the league office is run by, like, one receptionist and 2 bits of string.
And 3 kids in a trench coat.
That receptionist, 3 kids in a trench coat. The 2 bits of string are separate to that.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just, yeah, like, this is not a sort of thing that should happen. Like, I guess I can kind of see when just negless players get traded, sure, because these lists can change daily, hourly. Like, at any point in time, teams can change their negotiation list. So if you're basically, as Jacques Cartier on Twitter put it, trading Pokemon cards, so be it. But yeah, with the draft pick involved. But to me, this just comes around again to a greater discussion about the negotiation list.
Yes.
And to me, ultimately, I think it's outdated.
Yes.
We can talk about, whether the names should be released or not. I know they release the 10 player thing every so often, but
yeah,
all those players could literally be off the list the second that thing is announced.
Yes.
So personally, I just don't think the negotiation list holds any purpose in 2024. Like, it's basically a wage suppression system if we really want to get into it, because you're basically forcing this guy to sign with your team on your terms rather than making them all unrestricted free agents, which they should be.
Right.
So personally, I would just abolish the whole thing. But if they're not going to, then this thing needs to be like the CFL.ca transactions page, where it is constantly updated and everyone can see everyone who's on this thing.
See, you don't need to put out press releases. The teams, I don't think, have to announce it. But
No, but it needs to be available there. So, and you could easily use AI to put, track all this information, because teams, put it into some kind of system, and then it all, it just translates onto a website for them. Like, this could all easily be automated, right?
Well, and I'm just throwing it out there that one of the most complex leagues in terms of weird transactions is the National Lacrosse League.
Yeah.
Because you often have guys move to different, like, holdout or suspended lists because they just can't make the game that weekend because of work commitments, right? So that is all up to, like, you can go on the NLL website and go to the transactions page and see every single guy that's been moved to this list, to that list, from this list to that list, right? Like, does it impact you as a broadcaster, as a fan? 99% of the time, no, but that information is still out there, right? So it's just, you're right. It's remarkable that in today's day and age, you can't say, here's your negotiation list, and this guy was dropped, and this guy was added. I mean, hell, my fantasy football team, like, you go in your fantasy football waiver wire and see every guy that I ad drop during the week, especially on Wednesdays, right? Like, make it like Wacky Waiver Wednesday, just like a fantasy football league. You can see who was added. And again, maybe you bring in some American eyeballs, because that is where you're bringing these guys from. They see a college guy they had, because we've all seen the memes, especially on Instagram these days, or at least my algorithms, like, guys will become attached to a random wide receiver in their 20s and love him forever. Like, I feel like that's today's day and age. You got a guy who loved college.
You're a reporter in some, area that's big in college, and you have some Google alerts, and maybe you leave some old ones on for some players, and all of a sudden one pops up because his name popped up in a CFL negotiation list, right?
Exactly.
You have a story down south suddenly, boom, right? Like,
I mean, again, I have a Ryan Dinwiddie jersey here, like, and that was even before I became a Boise State fan.
Yeah, you were just never wrong, just early, right?
That's fair. That's fair.
So yeah, just in a perfect world, get rid of the negotiation list. That's how I feel about it. I mean, if you really want to do it, and something I was thinking about yesterday making supper is, you could maybe set up some kind of undrafted college player draft, where maybe you pick 2 or 3 players a year and you hold their rights for a year or two, and if you don't sign them within that period, then they become unrestricted free agents or something. But the whole negless thing, let's because then it's a whole publicly announced thing. You can see, okay, the Riders have picked players X, Y, and Z. Now if they don't sign within 2 years, their rights are now anybody's.
Right, and that's actually, it's funny again to go onto the National Lacrosse League experience, but that's basically how the NLL draft and things like that work. So if another I'm not going to say mid-tier. If another like lower tier professional like league can do this and do
hopefully
it effectively.
No one from the NLL is listening.
Yeah. Whatever. I've been told that our negotiations are still up in the air. So I mean,
so you may be costing yourself a job right now. Cool.
I don't think I am, but I wouldn't say mid-tier, but like if a smaller professional league,
not the Big Four.
Thank you.
A league that is not the Big Four. Yes.
Exactly. If they can do it, then the CFL should be able to, because the CFL's been around for hundreds of years. The NLL's been around for 30, right?
Maybe this is on Genius list of things to do. They'll get to it in 2045.
Exactly. Hey, we got champion data now at the NLL. That ish is amazing. Game prep just became so much easier. You know what else is so much easier?
What is so much easier?
Selling playoff tickets in Saskatchewan.
Look at you with the transition.
Boom!
Boom!
There we go!
It's like you tried to set yourself up on purpose there.
No, I didn't. There was a pregnant pause there, and I was waiting for you to pick it up. So I'm like, in my mind, this is what you were going to say. So the words just came out of my voice. So,
yes, the Saskatchewan Roughriders have, of course, they've qualified for the playoffs this year. And frankly, have a pretty decent shot at actually hosting a playoff game now.
Wild.
Thanks to kind of what's been going on with the BC Lions. Technically still an outside shot at the West Final as well, but I don't know if I'm ready to declare that likely.
Yes.
But still mathematically possible. We'll know after this weekend whether there's really a chance or not. But for now, I think we're going to operate under the assumption that they're more likely to host the West semifinal than not. So we will get into that and a whole bunch more. But as usual, for the Pile of Bones Brewing Company, John, what is in the glass this week?
Well, after drinking a copious amount of Lake of the Woods, Blueberry Ale, Forgotten Lake, the Nautical Disaster Double IPA while I was back in Northern Ontario, we've gone back to Sask. And, nothing makes a podcast better than a guy who missed watching the football game because his youngest sister, Leah, was getting married. Big congrats, Leah and Josh. Party was off the chain. I love both you guys to death. So happy for both of you. I was the MC at that wedding, had zero fun doing so.
No, you're terrible at that, yeah.
Oh, Jeff, I've never been known to be a good MC. And people that, make suggestions during should just let me cook. But anyways, there's a story there I'll tell you off air. Okay. But I have gone because I'm still on holidays till Friday. So I'm like, you know what? I'm back in Sask. I burned a bunch of calories curling last night. I got all the Halloween decor up today. I feel like I deserve a Pile of Bones Double White IPA, the official beer of the podcast, but with more booze. And to me, dare I say it, and this is, we all know my Mount Rushmore of beers includes the white IPA.
Yep.
The double white tastes better. It's just it's not the kind of beer like you can't go outside after you've had one. That's the problem. It's not like you can't have a double white and then be like, yeah, I'm gonna run to the grocery store. Like, no, the double white hits you in the face, right? So that's the kind of and let's face it, for a podcast like ours, where we don't really focus on accuracy. Again, I watched a 10-minute recap video of the game. I read your article. I read articles from our friend Britton Gray. And now I'm going to crush an 8% beer and give the best takes on it because that is how we roll here.
Absolutely. For me, I picked up the variety pack from our friends at 9 Mile Legacy Brewing.
Oh, nice.
So I am drinking the Rafiki Moha IPA this evening, which is sort of typical style IPA. A little bitter, little crushable, just all around delicious, though. One of my all-time favorites, for sure.
So you and I are both on very strong, hoppy, bitter beers tonight. So this is going to be a good one.
This one isn't nearly as strong alcohol, though. It is 6.1, so not quite there.
Not quite the 8%. Okay.
No, but I was playing dodgeball before this, so I have had another beer before that as well, which was the Pile of Bones White IPA because it was the only option on tap at the establishment that we were at. But at least it was there, so that's good.
And now, actually, last night I was able to crush a white IPA at the Newtana Curling Club, which now has a craft beer selection for this season.
Nice.
And to peel the curtain back as well, because I'm a bit of a degenerate, I did have some Lucky Bastard vodka and lemon while I was doing prep for this episode tonight, as it's been a long time since we've recorded after 9 o'clock. So this is like,
yes, this is
full cast after dark vibes tonight.
I think like our first season of this was pretty normal, but
yeah,
it's been a while.
Because of Max, and then it's like, oh wait, we can actually record it then it went to just recording at a decent time because we both could, and then it's like, okay, we record earlier because
we've even done the odd one when like the sun was still up this year.
That's right, which is hard to do now in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, but, I mean, like literally, it was like noon. We've done it a few times, but
I know, sipping on coffee, and it just doesn't feel right. Like I love you to death. You are probably my best friend of the whole world, but I feel weird talking to you without booze.
I don't know what that says about me, but okay.
Greencast After Dark, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, Saskatchewan Roughriders, they have made the playoffs for the 2024 season after what has been a weird season, I guess, to put it lightly. Yes. The 5-1 start, everyone sort of predicted, we would easily have been the spot at this point. Then you go winless in 7, and you start to question everything about this team and whether they have the ability to get there. Luckily for them, I mean, Calgary just completely never really knew how to play football this year, so they were never really a concern. The Edmonton Elks eventually remembered who they were, as most bad teams do. They kind of get a mid-season run. We've seen this often in the CFL. Both Edmonton and Hamilton went through this at basically the same time. They kind of got better for a while, looked competitive, and people were like, oh, maybe, but then eventually the wheels do fall off again, and they did. So that really helped the Riders get into a win, and they were in situation last week against the Edmonton Elks. And yeah, they certainly did not make it easy on themselves, as we knew they wouldn't, because why would they?
Because they never do.
They never do, but they won the game. That's really all that matters. And for the first time in a few years, they are in the playoffs. And I made the comment afterwards, after I wrote the column online, that yes, of course, every year the number one goal is to win the Grey Cup, because every year is sacred and, so on and so forth. But sort of in the grand scheme of things of where this team is at, it is safe to say that this is now a positive year for the team, because they have taken a pretty big step forward. And the future challenge now will be to try to build on that heading forward.
Certainly. Also, the Elks were undone by a Fraser curse that we didn't really talk about a few weeks ago. I pinch hit on my...
You've Fraser cursed them so many times that it's just like life at this point. Like I feel like Larry Thompson, you should probably talk to Larry Thompson. He may pay you a lot of money to never talk about the Edmonton Elks again.
Never picked him for anything again. No, hey, that man is bleeding money, and
he's apparently setting off like all kinds of pyro at every game now, so he's clearly showing off. So
well, he can show off, and yeah, no, I'm planning a family vacation to Edmonton here in the winter. So, Larry, you want to pick up the tab for an Airbnb and a couple days at the West Edmonton Mall? I will almost certainly never speak about your team again, as I did on Clayton Croker's Sask Sports and Foods podcast. And said that Edmonton was super dangerous. I was worried about them, and then they haven't won since. So, typical Fraser curse fashion. And how bananas land is this, that for the first time since 1945, neither Alberta club will be in the playoffs, which means you as a visiting fan will not get assaulted physically or verbally going to tailgate at any of these games.
Yeah, it is actually like the first time in what is considered the modern CFL.
Wild.
That not a single team from Alberta has made the playoffs.
Right.
And it was interesting, and I'll bring it up with Jacques Cartier on Twitter, said until 2022, I believe he said, neither all at the same time, both Edmonton and Saskatchewan, at least one of them had always made the playoffs until that year as well. So
crazy.
2 really long streaks like that have ended. I think obviously the Alberta one is a little more interesting for obvious reasons because they're in the same province. It'd be like in the years there was no Ottawa team if Toronto and Hamilton both missed the playoffs.
Right.
So it's kind of along those lines. That may have happened. I don't know, because the East is weird like that.
Yeah, when Winnipeg's always gone back and forth as stepchild of the two of the league, but no,
and only 4 teams. If there's a crossover, it's possible both of them could have missed, I suppose. But
100%. But we are not CFL historians, nor do we claim to be. Right? We leave Jock to do.
I barely remember what happened 5 weeks ago, let alone 10.
I'm not gonna lie. I barely remember what happened this week. Like,
well, you didn't watch it, so.
Oh no! I didn't even like. Normally when I don't watch, I'm at least like, okay, I might listen to Dave and Luke on the radio because I'm traveling someplace or anything like that. No, I was at my sister's wedding.
Yeah.
I didn't realize what the score was until with one eye open, as Connor had randomly puked at 1:30 in the morning. I was reading The Good, Bad, and the Dumb. Like, I was that.
It's a very good time to read that, yeah. After your child pukes, it's a very good time to read that. I agree. It's the official column of your child puking, yes.
Your child puking as you comfort them to figure out. And all dads will know this. Is this a multiple puke situation, or is this he got into the snacks a little too late and went to bed situation? You know, they're two very different things as a father, right? So, but no, I didn't watch it. I read your column. I did watch a bit today, but the interesting thing that I did read and watching the highlights and watching what I have was Trevor Harris's comments to Britton Gray that we're still not playing great football yet. And I think this team is gearing up for a sneaky late season run.
It's possible.
Right? Like, again, it's mathematically possible. You could catch Winnipeg. It would take...
they have to win out. Winnipeg has to lose out. So
right, which I don't see happening.
The Riders could well win out, but I don't see Winnipeg losing both games.
But I mean, looking big picture here, this entire season, the amount of injuries this team has dealt with, the amount of adversity this team has dealt with, largely from injuries, because it's not like they have guys that are snap shows on the team or anything like that. You know, you've got this team that, although injured, beat up, is still finding ways to win. Yeah, I think running into that losing streak during the middle of the season might actually end up being a good thing.
I mean, it's happened many times, many teams.
Yeah.
You don't generally want it to go 7 games.
Right.
But yeah, like a good 3 to 4 game streak every year is kind of what as weird as it sounds, you generally want to go through it because every team is different. And even if you're a championship team, I mean, I think the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are maybe better than they've ever been in a lot of ways right now because of all the shit they went through to start the season.
Well,
because they didn't get to coast through the season like they have so many other times. So there is a very good chance, you know, if the season ended today and all that the Grey Cup could be a rematch of last year, but probably a flip for the exact opposite reasons for each team.
No, certainly, and I think Zach Collaros is playing the best football he ever has.
Potentially, yeah. But I mean, like the defense and special teams are so good right now that they could win that thing for them on their own.
No, certainly, and Brady Oliveira. But I mean, like you're watching Zach win them games, right? Which is scary. That you've had a team that's been this dominant forever with a quarterback that plays not to lose is suddenly playing to win when he needs to, right? So I think a Saskatchewan-Winnipeg game could be an absolute slobber knocker, right?
I mean, I think for the league that is the best West final possible, whether it's here or there.
Right.
BC is not equipped to beat the Bombers. We've seen that over and over again this year and in the past. And their team, even if they come into here or the Riders go to BC Place and they win that West semifinal, I still don't think they have anything in the tank to beat the Bombers because there's just weird things going on in BC.
Right? Like a team that's spending this much money over the salary cap, which is essentially a luxury tax.
Fine. Yep, it's fine.
Go ahead.
No problem with it.
I'm a firm believer that if you're hosting the Grey Cup, your management and your ownership is doing the fan base a disservice if you're not spending to the luxury tax threshold. You're making oodles of money from your festivals, your attendance, everything. You know you're going to host that game. I think you're doing a disservice to not at least spend to the luxury tax threshold, right?
Yeah.
That $300,000 or whatever it is, right? But whatever the hell is going on in BC, like they've fallen off the rails. And I really think, and a friend of the program, Dave Thomas, tweeting it, the bodies the Riders had back at practice this week.
Yep.
I'm still not sold on AJ Ouellette.
Neither am I. No.
But bringing back...
But I think at this point it's fair to say he's better than Frankie Hickson.
Yeah. I don't think he's as good as Raquel, but... No. I do think he's better than Frankie. Frankie Hickson, like the only time that the run game has disappeared in Saskatchewan has been when Frankie Hickson has played. And Frankie Hickson does a job, and you can tell that game against Edmonton that Frankie does a good job of blocking.
Yep.
So we're just going to keep him in there. We're going to let Harris air it out. And as you pointed out in Good, Bad, and Dumb, the receivers showed up for Trevor Harris here in this win over Edmonton.
And that was the really big takeaway for me in that game was, I mean... the receiving core, I would say, for most of the year has been fine to good. but not great.
The talent's there.
The talent's kind of there, but yeah. And like, as I said, I'm not very good at remembering things that happened 5 weeks ago. But I don't particularly have many standout moments over the last few games, the last while, where like receivers went up or went down and got balls for their quarterback. Like, it feels like it's been a while since we had sort of those wow catches from anyone in this receiving core. And like that Keyshawn Johnson one, I was literally sitting here like, oh my God.
Oh, that was great.
Right?
Up and over the defensive back.
Most tax pros leave a message.
It's Jane. I'm moving on to a TurboTax expert who beat your price. Adam Devine, tell him how I feel.
Hey, tax pro, she's been thinking twice. Best believe TurboTax will beat your price. This is a tax break.
Switch to a TurboTax Live expert and we'll beat what you paid your pro last tax season. Make the switch at TurboTax.com/beatyourprice. TurboTax full service only. Sign up by 12/20/2024 and file by 4/1/2025. Full details at TurboTax.com/beatyourprice.
Most tax pros leave a message.
It's Jane. I'm moving on to a TurboTax expert who beat your price. Adam Devine, tell him how I feel.
Hey, tax pro, she's been thinking twice. Best believe TurboTax will beat your price. This is a tax break.
Switch to a TurboTax Live expert and we'll beat what you paid your pro last tax season. Make the switch at TurboTax.com/beatyourprice. TurboTax full service only. Sign up by 12/20/2024 and file by 4/1/2025. Full details at TurboTax.com/beatyourprice.
Yeah.
Like, and there's a guy that basically showed up in training camp, and that's where we discovered him, right?
Yeah, and everyone was just kind of making the Keyshawn, not that Keyshawn Johnson jokes, and now he is his own Keyshawn Johnson.
which again, to the credit of Dave Thomas and Luke Mullender, they were talking that guy up back in the preseason to the camp that he had. So you're looking at
everyone was there, had really good things to say about him at camp. Yeah,
right. So this whole team, they've been beat up beyond recognition the entire year.
Yeah.
Like, I know Winnipeg had their injury struggles, and that's what led to their slow start. And Saskatchewan, I think you can now firmly say that injuries were the biggest factor in the 7-game winless streak.
And sort of just bad luck in circumstances and weird things happening. Yeah.
Right, which will happen.
Like, which, as we talked about during that streak, like, every game was always something different, which is incredibly frustrating if you're a fan or a member of the organization, because, you know, there's this weird ways you're losing every week. But on the positive end of that is, it's not like you're losing because of X every single week. It's not like you can say, oh, the Riders kept losing because the defense couldn't stop a cold or something, right? Like, it was just, this would happen, and then that would happen. And like, eventually, all of this stuff would sort of eventually sort itself out. And it did against the Edmonton game, where most of the breaks in that game went their way.
Yes, I mean, certainly. You look at the one interception.
Yeah.
Right. I think it was all Claire that literally.
Yeah,
like,
it bounced off Geno Lewis's knee, and he caught it.
Yeah, like right. Like, that's the kind of shit that happens to me when I'm playing NCAA football, right? And you're going, oh, this game's rigged. It's not real. Screw this game. I'm shutting it off, right? And all of a sudden, you're seeing interceptions like that happen in real time in professional football, right?
Yeah, and they got the pass interference call to essentially seal the game that Corey Mace challenged on. I didn't particularly see pass interference in that play, but okay, I guess they were kind of owed one after sort of the debacle in Ottawa and a few other things that have happened this year. So, I mean, that's just another reason not to challenge penalties, but that's a whole other thing. The only sort of thing I think we need to talk about from that game in terms of a bigger picture perspective is, and they talked about this a lot in the Green Zone postgame show, is the killer instinct of this team. And the ability to put away a team, because we saw it in Calgary a couple of weeks ago. I think in Ottawa they did a pretty good job controlling most of that game, where they didn't necessarily get sort of that big blow until late.
Right.
But it never really felt out of their control in that game. Against Calgary, it was like, I think part of it was because Roland Milligan Jr. wasn't there. They just kept in the second half, letting Calgary hang around after touchdown, after touchdown, after touchdown. Yeah. Luckily, they kept responding, so it turned out to be okay. And then in this Edmonton game, and we've seen this before from this team on a few different occasions, where it's late in the game, the offense has the ball with like 4 to 5 minutes left. If they can just put together a few touchdowns, they'll basically ice this thing. It's not even like they need to score a touchdown right now, or they need a field goal right now to put this thing out of reach. It's just put together some sort of drive to chew up some clock, and this thing is probably over. And they promptly go 2 and out just about every time. And in this game, if not for that pass interference call, they would have done that 3 times, because there's the 2 and out, They punted. They got a 2-and-out. They went 2-and-out again. And then the Edmonton ended up going and getting the ball back. And they got another stop on the Elks. I believe that's when the interception happened.
Yes.
And then they had what would have been a 2-and-out if not for the pass interference call again. It was like, you almost gave Edmonton another crack at this to win this game. If you like, as bad as they are, and as much as you were leading that whole game, if you gave a team enough chances, I don't care how good of a playmaking defense you have, eventually one of these is going to break.
And that's why I don't think they're a contender.
No, that's their biggest flaw.
We call it, and CFB fans call it Death Star mode.
Yeah.
Right. And you've seen it out of Winnipeg this year again, where they just basically blow the other team out of the water.
Well, that game in Hamilton this past week was a perfect example. It was kind of close for a half, and then nothing happened in the second half, but Winnipeg had the ball pretty much the whole time.
Right. Or you see the other Death Star mode where teams will go ahead and just score a ton of points, right? Yep. And you've got that ability to do that, and this team seems to lack that. And that's fine. Like this is still, you got to think this is still in essence a rebuilding team.
Yeah, it's a team in transition still for sure. They need to learn how to do that, essentially.
Yes. Yeah. And Corey Mace needs to learn how to be a head coach.
Yes.
Right, because he's never been that in any position. I like Corey Mace as a motivator. From everything we've heard, like we're not
as a leader of men. He sounds incredible. Yes.
Oh my God, and the way that locker room operates, it sounds good. Like it doesn't. We're not hearing these whispers, and we never did with Corey Chamberlain. Which
not even whispers. We haven't even heard about guys literally fighting after games like in Calgary.
That's exactly right. But like I look back to like when they were having success with Chris Jones, and it was like you were still hearing the whispers of who Chris Jones is as a person that we've discussed to the point that we can discuss without worrying about lawsuits on this podcast, right? But
yeah, I mean, you've already got yourself fired tonight. You also don't need to get sued. So
I mean, I feel like you walked it back. You walked it back for me.
I did, but come on, I had to make the joke.
Four. You saved my ass. So
I had to make the joke. I had to.
I know. I appreciate it, but
I mean, just as long as you don't, I don't know, start promoting Kias or something.
Oh no, that would get me fired. Not calling the NLL not a big four is not going to get me fired. No, but yeah, you just hear like it just seems like this is a group that they like each other, and Corey Mace has that part down, but I don't know if he has the head coaching part down.
Yeah, the game management certainly still leaves something to be desired, and I mean it's the only thing you can learn by doing it.
Yes,
and you can only do it until you're actually a head coach. It's one thing to think about it when you're a reporter, you're a fan, you're a coordinator, you're a positions coach, all that sort of stuff. But until you're actually in the moment, you just have to learn and figure it out. And like this kind of goes back a couple of weeks. There was the game against Ottawa where he was weirdly inconsistent about sort of his aggressive versus conservative moments, because he punted from, I believe, his own 51 and his own 50 on like a 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2 situation, but went for it on his own 48. And I believe that was for sure a 3rd and 2.
Right.
And got that. The other two he punted. This week, against Edmonton, there was a 3rd and 5, a 3rd and goal at the 5-yard line, which I'm not super angry about. It's a situation where I personally probably would have gone for the touchdown, but I can, in a way, understand take the points.
Yep.
Even though you give up 30 in the CFL, give up 35 yards field position, and Edmonton did come back and score a touchdown and erase all of that anyway. Would they have scored a touchdown if they had to go an additional 35 yards?
I don't know.
Who knows? We can never say. But it's one of those scenarios where I'm like, I didn't like it, but I'm not also super mad about it. But it's a scenario where push comes to shove, at some point you got to consider it. The other one was the 3rd and inches. It was less than a yard at his own 36-yard line, and he punted. And this was in the 4th quarter in a situation, again, where you pick this up, you're taking a little more time off the clock, especially in the CFL, where the 20-second game clock sometimes takes up to 30 seconds to start. Especially if you're the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and Mike O'Shea, who clearly know how to work this to their advantage. Which is fine. It's within the rules.
My team winning.
It's within the rules, so they're taking advantage of it. That's cool. The CFL needs a running play clock. But and instead they punted. And if not for a review and for a potential close scoring play that is allowed, sorry, McLeod Bethel Thompson, that, if that is clearly a catch, Edmonton is at the 1 and is scoring a touchdown there.
Yeah.
And taking the lead.
No, 100% they are.
I believe they're taking the lead at the time. I forgot what the score was exactly the time. But it's just one of those scenarios where it's like, you weren't aggressive and it just about cost you.
Did you watch Receiver on Netflix, Gas?
I haven't yet, no.
There's one thing I learned because one of the players they follow was Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Detroit Lions. And Dan Campbell, their coach, is notoriously hyper aggressive.
Oh, he's great. I love Dan, yeah.
So do I. Like, I love that approach to the game. Like, you can't be in the middle. You either need to decide you're going to play
putting it on the table every time, yeah.
Exactly. Either I'm going to be safe every time and trust my defense, and that motivates your defense because your coach trusts you. Or you need to be Dan Campbell, where upon watching Receiver, I'm like, these guys get to 4th and 1 and get hyped.
Yeah.
They get to 4th and 2 and they get hyped up because they're like, yeah, we're coming for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So,
and you can create that culture of, aggression and winning and, playing to win and, sort of playing the game on the balls of your toes instead of your heels by stepping up in those moments and creating those plays. No question.
Certainly. And that's what I feel like after watching Receiver, I'm like, more coaches need to pull the Dan Campbell. Now, again, and we've said this about Corey Mace, and you just said it, that you can't, we can all sit here and play NCAA football, Madden, and go, I'd go for it there, I'd go for it, right? Until your full-time job as professional football coach, you don't know what runs through that head. And that's, Corey Mace has not been a head coach at any level at any point before, right? Mm-hmm. Corey Mace, just like this team, is still figuring out who he is. I honest to God believe that in about 3 years, Corey Mace is going to be more Dan Campbell, less Andy Reid.
I hope so.
Right?
Well, I mean, I hope they have an Andy Reid as well, so they can be creatively on offense. But that's neither here nor there. Yeah, he could be, and it would certainly be good to see. And I think part of it, in the defense of the situation, is personnel.
Yes.
And the way things are. Like, obviously, the offensive line is incredibly beat up, but I believe they could pick up a few inches on a first down.
Yeah.
And I think they haven't. It'll be interesting to see what they do in the offseason. I like Shea Patterson as a backup quarterback. I don't think he's necessarily your sneak guy.
No.
And so it'll be interesting to see if they, sort of look at that approach in the offseason and say, okay, do we A, get a big body quarterback to be number 3 to do that? Or B, do we follow the likes of the Hamilton Ticats, and I believe BC starting to do a little bit too, where we put our fullback back there, let him take the ball and push forward.
I love that.
I love it. Like, why not? Antoi's back in town. He could do it. Bertrand Houdon could easily do that as well. Like, you have these guys on your roster that could do it. Why not use them in a direct snap? They could be under center, grab the ball, and just push forward with one of the biggest non-offensive linemen you have on the field.
Right.
Hell, give it to Mika Johnson. The guy already played offensive line this year. Surely he can push forward with the ball, can he?
I mean, the guy can do it all, right? So,
I mean, the Refrigerator Perry was one of the best at it, and he was a defensive lineman.
Certainly was, right? So, you're right. Get some creativity in there. Let's, and I think too, and that brings up a point. And this is, I can't find the stats on this, and I've been trying.
You can't find a stat in the CFL. Wow.
Right? Shocker. But it seems to me, just from watching Bomber games, Rider games primarily, and then the highlights of the rest of the league, is that teams are becoming more successful at stopping teams on 3rd and 1.
They are. It does anecdotally feel that way for sure, yeah.
Yeah. I have no numbers to back that up. But even like you watch Shea Patterson in this game against Edmonton.
Well, I mean, Shea Patterson last year lost his job doing this.
Right. And he got pushed back a yard at one point.
Yeah.
That was a second down, but still. Man got pushed back a yard behind the offensive line, which should never happen. You're given a yard in the CFL.
I believe he was in the shotgun on that too, though. So.
No, he was under center.
Was he? Okay.
He was. Yep. Yeah. Because I actually saw that and went, huh. Wow. That was even on the CFL.ca highlights package. That was that well done by Edmonton. But yeah, get some more. Like even back when Saskatchewan used Nick Marshall back there.
Yeah.
Right. Like get creative with that. And I hope Corey Mace and Mark Mueller are those guys. They, on the outside, seem like they might.
Mark Mueller feels like that kind of guy to me that will evaluate everything and is open to trying anything and isn't a guy who's like, no, this is the way I do things.
Right.
He doesn't feel like I don't have any sources any sort of actual feeling about anything like concrete information about that. But I feel like Mark Miller is that guy who, and we've seen a whole lot of different variations of this offense this year, is why I feel that way, is
yes,
he will adapt to his surroundings rather than trying to force a square into a circle.
Which, again, you look at the resurgence of, former number one overall pick quarterbacks in the NFL, such as Sam Darnold with my Minnesota Vikings, that, good coaches bring out the best in their players rather than trying to peg them into a system, right? Yeah. So I think the coaching's there. They're inexperienced. They need to learn. And I hope it comes, I hope that come the playoffs, you just see this, hyper-aggressive, go-for-it Corey Mace, Mark Mueller duo.
I mean, literally, there'd be nothing to lose at that point. I think especially if they get to a West Final in Winnipeg, there is nothing to lose in that scenario.
Right.
Winnipeg should probably be heavy favorites. Go all out. Don't leave anything unturned. Go for 3rd and 4s, if you have to. Go for it. Go and win that game rather than sitting back and trying to not lose to Winnipeg.
Right. This team has now, by making the playoffs, you're playing with house money.
Agreed.
I don't think there's a fan in the world or an analyst in the world or any. You can even go back on our episodes and we said, hey, they should make the playoffs this year. Mm-hmm. That's about it. You've hit the goal.
And I mean, and statistically, we've talked up Winnipeg, and odds are probably in their favor that they're going to win the West Final at home again and go to the Grey Cup for the 5th straight year. But mathematically, this is not going to happen eventually.
No.
And on any given day, weird things can happen. And if you are in the right place at the right time, they could still, in theory, I think, win that football game. I don't think it's such a foregone conclusion if the Riders go into Winnipeg that they are going to lose. They are likely to lose, but I don't think I will say with 100% certainty that they are going to lose that football game.
Well, and especially if bad Zach shows up.
Yeah, that's one of the factors. Yeah,
if playoff Zach shows up and they're in Winnipeg and it's cold and you're playing the smash mouth football, you've got everybody back, and it looks like the Riders are getting healthy at the right time. That's the other big thing is following Dave Thomas and seeing that bodies that are back at practice and stuff. It's okay, you're right. You haven't played your best football. You've overcome adversity. You've done all those things that generally lead to a championship team. And now you just got to get healthy. And it looks like they're getting healthy. Right. Mm-hmm. So anything past here is house money. So good for them.
Yep. And I think part of the reason for the success, one guy who's been healthy all year, that's only missed one game because of the birth of his child, which is 100% fair.
Right.
Is of course, Roland Milligan Jr. And plenty of discussion right now about the presumptive, at least Riders' most outstanding player nominee. I don't think there's any question about that. There's no one else close to being worthy of that. Maybe Logan Ferland, but it'd be, as fair as that may be for him to be in consideration of that, it's not going to go to an offensive lineman. No. So the greater question has become, should he be the MOP of the entire league? And I think it's fair to say he is in that conversation this year because arguably the best quarterback in the league this year is Bo Levi Mitchell, who's playing on a bad team and isn't going to make the playoffs and didn't really get that signature game he needed against Winnipeg to sort of get over that hump of being able to be MOP without even making the playoffs.
Right.
And so Milligan's in this conversation because he leads the league in 8 interceptions. He has, I believe, the most knockdowns as well, or he's up there at least. And sort of the twist that I think really makes him an interesting candidate is the fact that he leads the league in special teams tackles.
Right.
So the guy is very good at 2/3 of the game. So maybe he can run the short yardage. Who knows? I don't know if you don't want to Travis Hunter this guy. You don't want to give him too many reps.
No.
But so that's what makes it interesting. And I think he's a legitimate candidate. I think realistically, if we're talking about, if this was, a more normal league, shall we say, where we weren't, sort of stuck with an antiquated system where you can only vote on guys based on being the team nominees, sort of go forward, I think it would be fair to say at the award show in Vancouver, if there was only 2 nominees, they should probably be Brady Oliveira and Roland Milligan Jr.
But yes, because of the
weird division. If you did 3, because of the weird division thing, and you have to vote for players in the next round who are nominated by their teams. Who knows what's going to happen, because it's probably then going to be the Roland versus Brady in the West Division voting, and at that point we'll probably know who's actually going to win come the awards night in Vancouver.
Certainly, and especially, and like you and I were talking, it's like for MOP, you're looking Brady Oliveira and Roland Milligan.
Yeah.
But for All-Star awards even, and how flawed it is, especially this year in a 9-team league, to have division All-Stars where no Western quarterback deserves to be an All-Star this year.
No. And this is like the most flagrant. Like there's been scenarios in the past where, maybe there isn't really a good, an offensive lineman and it isn't a guard, or a defensive tackle that you think is necessarily worthy within a division, and that's always happened, and we kind of roll our eyes at it or whatever. But we are literally talking about the quarterbacks of a division, and you can sit there and say, I don't think any of these guys really should be all-stars. Shows how stupid that there is division all-stars.
Oh, certainly. Like it's Bo and Cody. Bo and Cody this year are the 1-2 quarterbacks in the CFL, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And just like the MOP awards, it's hard. And the shitty thing is, and this is why Milligan, like, on top of having, like, teams don't typically throw at him.
No.
On top of that, he still has all the flashy numbers, which is why I think he's still in the conversation for the casual voter. That's just
because realistically, a DB should win MOP if he has no stats, because it means the ball is literally never thrown at him.
Right, exactly. But Roland Milligan is playing in a way that, like, he's not getting the ball thrown at him, and when it is, he's usually picking it off or forcing a turnover or something like that. Right? And even you saw the game against Calgary, where he wasn't there for good reason.
Yep.
To me, that's what you put on his MOP audition tape is like, hey, look at this game I wasn't there, and look how bad they look compared to the rest of the season, right? So it is flawed, because, like, I don't, like, who comes out of the East as MOP?
I mean, it's probably still Bo.
Right.
I don't think he has a chance of winning at a national level, but it's probably still him in the East. I mean, if Cody Fajardo played the whole year, it might have been him. His numbers haven't been flashy, but I mean, on QB wins, he'll get some consideration. But
QB wins, like.
But then Davis Alexander came in and played just well, if maybe not even better than Cody, and I think that changed a lot of minds on sort of his trajectory on that this season.
Certainly. Meanwhile, Bo Levi Mitchell is on an absolute dog shit team, and is still like, they are still not mathematically eliminated. No. And oh my God, Hamilton is bad outside of Bo.
Yeah. And I mean, and in fairness, a lot of Bo's numbers come sort of in garbage time, especially early in the year when they were horrendous. He was able to pile on a lot of yards in bad games, but I mean, still, if you just took a stat line, took out the name, took out the team, took out the record, and just put that stat line on a paper, you would look at that and say, yeah, that guy could be an MOP.
It's not his fault that his defense has allowed 500 points. And
I have always said this, and I remember this even back on the day when I was on the Green Zone, and Glenn Suter, there was conversations a few years. I forget who the other candidate that Jamie was stunting for as being the Ryder nominee for most outstanding player was. But Glenn Suter was saying Darian Durant because he's the most valuable player on the team. When we'd always be like, no, it's not the most valuable player award. It is the most outstanding player award, which requires a player playing outstanding. I do not give a shit how valuable you are to a team. It's not about that. It is about how well you play compared to every other dude in this league, whether your team is good or crap.
It is the opposite of the Hart Trophy.
Yes.
In the NHL, right?
Which I think the outstanding is far better than just value to your team, because that's so vague and weird and makes no sense.
Well, no, 100%. Like, there's so many ways to...
Because if we're talking most valuable player, then we're just putting the 9 quarterbacks up against each other.
Or if you're talking most valuable player, you could also go deeper and say it's Logan Ferland.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. Logan Ferland may be the MVP of this team, but Roland Milligan Jr. is clearly the MOP of this team.
Yes, and that's what the name. It's the most outstanding player. That's how it's done. It's just a horribly flawed system with East versus West.
Yeah, I think if you wanted to revolutionize this thing, I think you can still do the team level awards. I think it's important.
I don't hate that at all.
No, I think it's important for every market to recognize their best players every year. Give those players that moment. It's an easy story. It's great press. It's the whole thing. But then once we get to the next level after that, whoever is nominated in those things does not matter. The vote basically should start fresh again at that point, and then we're just picking out of everyone to pick national finalists.
But the problem is with that is the downgrading of all these sports departments across the country that have been just like hacked and slashed, right? Like that gets into a large...
The Eastern reporters are frankly the biggest problem in a lot of this voting, yeah.
Right, like...
Because I know especially at least in Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, I know the voters take their voting responsibility very seriously.
Yes, 1,000,000% they do. Like, I even know that voters in Saskatchewan, Winnipeg that have not campaign, but like listen to other ideas.
Yes. And they like, especially along the lines like the offensive line one, like they will talk to teams' offensive line coaches to sort of get an idea.
Right.
Because that's like an impossible one to know that I don't even think media should be voting on the O-line award at all, because I think it's impossible to know, sometimes even within the own team you cover.
Right. and you and I watch shitloads of football.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm barely watching the offensive line.
That's it. Right? That's I used to laugh when I did Hilltop's play-by-play that my color commentator's there to watch the offensive line.
Yeah.
You know, I'm there to say this receiver had this great catch, this quarterback was great, and it's up on my color commentator to go, okay, look at that great play by the offensive line. But you're right, like it's so flawed, it's so messed up, and just like invisible trades, the CFL needs to really self-evaluate these days.
Most tax pros leave a message.
It's Jane. I'm moving on to a TurboTax expert who beat your price. Adam Devine, tell him how I feel.
Hey, tax pro, she's been thinking twice. Best believe TurboTax will beat your price. This is a tax break.
Switch to a TurboTax Live expert and we'll beat what you paid your pro last tax season. Make the switch at TurboTax.com/beatyourprice. TurboTax full service only. Sign up by 12/20/2024 and file by 4/1/2025. Full details at TurboTax.com/beatyourprice.
Most tax pros leave a message.
It's Jane. I'm moving on to a TurboTax expert who beat your price. Adam Devine, tell him how I feel.
Hey, tax pro, she's been thinking twice. Best believe TurboTax will beat your price. This is a tax break.
Switch to a TurboTax Live expert and we'll beat what you paid your pro last tax season. Make the switch at TurboTax.com/beatyourprice. TurboTax full service only. Sign up by 12/20/2024 and file by 4/1/2025. Full details at TurboTax.com/beatyourprice.